Welcome to the Cure for Stupidity podcast, an ongoing exploration of the stupidity in real life, relationships, parenting, and more. All right, welcome back to the Cure for Stupidity podcast, episode 4.
Episode 4.
And today is going to be fun because we got in an argument. It was an argument for the ages, I'd say, for us.
We're calling it the argument.
Oh yeah, Jerem actually had a school assignment and included it in the school assignment, and the title of the paper was The Argument. Yeah, it was a personal narrative story.
Yes, which turned out beautifully.
It did.
We both cried
hysterically. It was good that he was able to get such a sweet, tender learning experience from it, but whew, it was a fight.
So we promised that in this podcast we're going to be honest and authentic, and so we wanted to share that and how we process through it. But Jamie started with the suggestion at the very beginning of the podcast that we'll go through principle by principle of the book, and just so happens that the
universe.
So the principle that we're up against is the fight to be right, or the desire to fight to be right, and how that manifests so frequently during the argument was just unbelievable. So why don't you want to
talk about the principle first?
Okay, we'll talk about the principle first. I really want to get into what you thought about the fight. So the desire to fight to be right is all about how when we get into arguments or get into debates, how instead of trying to understand the other person's point of view, what we do is we fight and we hold on to this need for them to understand us. Like we need to be right. And we need to be acknowledged that we're right. And we need to even manifest in other ways. Like I need you to know that I'm smart, that I'm not stupid. I need you to know that, like I've actually done work. I've put forth effort and all of these different things. But it's all really it's a fight to be right. And what that does is when we're fighting to be right, we're trying to win an argument. We're trying to win a conversation. And honestly, what's really underneath it is, we don't say this part, but we want the other person to lose. Like if I win, you lose. And that desire, it comes at odds with what we ultimately want, which is a stronger relationship, right? Stronger communication. And so this fight to be right manifests itself, and I say the word manifest a lot, but it shows up in a lot of different arenas, at work, at home, with kids, with parents, on Facebook when we're debating and all of these things. And if we flipped it and instead sought to understand like the frustrations of the other person or what might have motivated those emotions in the other person, it wouldn't have gotten to where it was.
Yeah.
And so okay, that's enough of that. Let's go to the argument.
So we're renovating our house extensively. There's a lot going on. So last weekend, I really wanted to be productive. We had a honey-do list of things that electrically needed to be done, which means Eric, because I don't touch electric anything. And so, we use Evernote, kind of a joint note sharing app. And so, we wake up in the morning and we're getting ready for the day. And my mistake was I kept asking, do you want to go install the light switches, the ceiling fans, the whatever else, 18 things on the list. And Eric's response was,
I will. And so the reason I respond that way is because I find it frustrating when someone asks a question, but it's really veiled as a statement. And so what I'm hearing her say, which may or may not be erroneous, I'm hearing her say, I want you to do this thing. But she asks, do you want to do this thing? And honestly, the answer is no, I don't want to do this thing, but I will do this thing. And so what and full disclosure, when I get upset, I slide right into that zone of passive aggressiveness, which we've determined is one of Jamie's triggers of like,
don't handle that.
Don't do that. And so when I responded, I will, like I'm going through the
3 times, 3 separate times.
I'm going through the thought process of, hey, can't you see you're doing this thing again that drives me nuts? And I'm trying to communicate all of this without actually saying any of it. And so my response is very, very passive aggressive. Oh, I will. Right? Do you hear me? I will do the thing you're asking me to do. You just have to ask me to do it. And all of that's kind of mangled up into these 2 words, I will, which is passive aggressive, which drives Jamie nuts. And so when we started to get into the argument, and Jamie very quickly, just to be clear, Jamie very quickly broke it down. Like, I'm not actually asking you to do this thing. There's just a list of things. You seem unmotivated at this time. What about this one? What about this one? What about this? And like, so she's actually giving me options and I'm hearing it as she's telling me what she wants me to do. And so I'm reacting with frustration. And
which, I mean, like, I am the project manager, so I am allowed to tell you.
You are, absolutely.
But I wasn't.
But you weren't.
I wasn't.
Right? You weren't.
I was being good. It was Saturday. I knew that it was like a chill day, but also like, let's kind of be productive.
Yeah. No, and I was, it's funny because in my mind, just to kind of go back to that moment, in my mind, I was on board with getting a lot of work done. Like,
I think in your head you were. But
at that point, I already got like 2 or 3 big projects already crossed off the list. And so I was ready to go. I was not motivated to do all the things, but I was committed to doing them. And
okay,
so that difference.
Good. That's good. I like that.
And so when the argument came about, it was a situation where Jerem had just finished assembling his own IKEA desk by himself, start to end.
First job ever for the kid is definitely going to be, I told him, I was like, there are so many people that hate installing IKEA in furniture or not installing, assembling. Thank you. That is his calling in life. Like, I got a printer stand this week, wasn't IKEA, totally just ordered off Amazon. I was like, hey, Jerem, you want to put together the printer stand? He's like, yes. Yeah. He went and he did it. I have a printer stand. It was amazing. I love that.
and so he had finished, or was about to finish, mostly finished. And so Jamie asked, do you want to help him finish the printer stand?
No, the desk.
Or the desk. Sorry. You want to go finish the desk. And what I heard was, do you want to go look at the stand? And maybe those are the words you said, but what you meant was, let's help him finish. And because we had to move it into the position.
Yeah, we had to put the L's together.
Yeah. Whatever. And so where Jerem's desk is for his online schooling is actually, it's in our bedroom. And so I go up there with the intention of looking at his work. And what do? I go sit in bed. I'm like, ooh, this is comfortable. So I lay in bed and
I come upstairs a minute later and Eric's laying in bed and he goes, do you want to join me?
Come on, it's so comfortable.
To which I respond, no, like, we're supposed to be doing the desk. We still have projects downstairs that we're in the middle of. Like, this was just a quick check on Jerem, see where he's at, help him get the desk in final position so that he can put the computer and all the other pieces on it and finish the job. Like, mark things off the list. Like we've already talked about, I'm a lister. Like, I run my life with lists. I've got backup lists to the list. So in my head, I want the desk done so we can keep moving down the list. And Jerem's like our best helper out of the kids. Mm-hmm. So if he's done there, he can come help us with even more projects and like accelerate even faster. So to find you in bed.
So how are you feeling at that moment?
Cuddly and warm.
No. That's there's something.
Why are you in bed?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah. And so you were annoyed, you were frustrated. Yeah. And so what Jamie decided to do at that moment, while she was frustrated and annoyed about me being in bed, is she decided to
run through the list of things to do.
And so what she said was, do you want to the next thing on the list? And so
okay, and to be clear, like 20 minutes before this was lunch, where we sat and we talked about the I will and all this stuff. And we talked about the fact that we were committed to getting this stuff done. Like we maybe didn't have a ton of energy, but like we were committed to doing it.
Committed, yes.
And 20 minutes later, you're laying in bed.
It was so comfortable. I didn't realize how tired I was. When I got there, I was like, oh, this is really nice. I can sit and look at Jerem's desk from here. This is comfortable.
I'm the queen of naps. Like I respect that. But just tell me, like, hey, you know what? I'm going to need to take a nap for a little bit first. Like just manage that expectation.
Totally would have, except I didn't realize it until I got into bed. And so Jamie, with the frustration of all of that, said, I don't remember what the next thing on the list was, but do you want to do the next thing on the list? And I'm like, I will. If you want me to do that, because I was frustrated that she didn't want to take a nap with me.
I will, number 3.
And so that was the spark, right? That was the spark for the argument. And it's funny because we were actually talking about this last night, kind of debriefing the argument, which we tend to do a lot. We tend to kind of go over and make sure that like all of the pieces were
reconciled.
That I offended you or I was kind of a jerk or whatever. Like,
well, I think just coming to the understanding of like, where was I a jerk? Like, where did I escalate?
Yeah.
Like, where did I throw gas on the fire as opposed to whatever? And like, honestly, I couldn't understand where I was fighting to be right. Like, I couldn't see where I was inciting, deeper, problems between us. I felt like I was like, hey, no big deal. Like, if you don't want to do it, like, just tell me you don't want to do it. Like, no big deal. Like, we can hire the handyman. We can do whatever we got to do.
Yeah.
I just didn't feel like the words and the actions were meshing. And then when I got the I will, it was so passive aggressive that it was like, dude, like, come on. I don't deserve that.
Yeah.
Come on. That's not where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like from that spark, I remember very vividly, I need you to see that you've offended me, that once again, you've used this phrase that bothers me. I need you to see that. And so I was fighting to be right.
Because I was asking, do you want to, as opposed to, will you?
Okay. Right. Okay. And it's funny because like kind of replaying the tape, like all of it was a waste of time. No, worse than a waste of time, because every time I, like in my head, needed you to understand my side, I was failing to understand your side. Like I didn't realize that, you were going through your lists and me laying in bed was like the opposite of what we had committed to do. And I wasn't thinking about that. I didn't understand your point.
Well, and I think there were just so many other small things throughout the day, like little small annoyances or, hiccups here and there that come up that did definitely add to probably my level of frustration and how once we got to the third I will, like all the other factors from the day and the small things that generally speaking can just go by and it's not a big deal. And at the end of the day, I can be like, that was pretty annoying, but like not a huge deal.
Yeah.
I think that all of that combined together really, really set me off to be like, okay, what are we doing? Like, what's going on here? Because this isn't working. Like, this is not working.
Yeah, the one thing that you helped kind of talk me through the next day when we kind of started debriefing it is how those things build up. And I think we talked about this in a previous episode with like leaving stuff around in the kitchen, how
leaving stuff around in the
what do you better kitchen? Stop it. Don't
get the socks and the shoes from under the desk.
Stop it.
Go ahead. I'm just saying.
Yes, there are socks underneath the desk. Because why are there socks under the? Do you understand why there be socks under the desk?
Because you only wore them for a little bit and you're going to use them again?
Because in the middle of my day yesterday, which was probably the heaviest day of facilitation and presentations, where I normally wear flip-flops under the desk. Normally, in the middle of that, our handyman, see, there's understanding.
All right.
The handyman needed help pulling down a beam, and you didn't feel comfortable with me wearing flip-flops on the ladder.
Correct.
So you got me socks. So I put them on for 5 minutes, got back into my office afterwards, and I was like, oh my God, my feet are hot. And so I took them off.
All right. I'll allow the socks under the desk.
I could have put them away.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, going back to it.
Big tangent.
But like when we talk about things in the kitchen kind of building up and and how the frustration builds, or when we're kind of driving in traffic, the frustration builds.
Recalculating.
Yeah. and my reaction is, it doesn't make sense to me that you are reacting so big to something that is relatively small. Like in my mind, you're like all of this emotion. Yeah. All of this emotion is tied to this one specific thing that was the trigger. But as we started to talk about it, it's like, oh, yes, this thing was annoying and was a trigger, but there was also this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing that you didn't bring up. And they were like, I remember when they came up, but to me, it's like, okay, they came up and went away. And
to you, they weren't attributing factors to you. They were, okay, that was minor. Okay, that was minor.
Yep,
okay.
Yeah, that was all in the past and all resolved.
So should I make them a bigger thing when they come up?
No.
So what do I do? Because I don't want to let them compound, but at the same time, like, how do I allow those things to pass? Like, how do I not get to that tipping point of like the balance of little annoyances to, I can't handle this anymore. Like, I got to say something.
I think about that a lot. I really do, because when those things, like when we debrief our arguments, it almost always comes down to, it was this and something else. And I think that what may work for us, because I don't think that making a bigger deal of things in the moment makes sense. I don't think that it's realistic to remember everything all at once.
And I feel like if I did, I would be fighting to be right more often.
Yeah.
Like every time it would be like, I need you to know. I need you to know. So I don't want to bring that further into the relationship.
Yeah. No, honestly, the thing I think would help us is if I perceive that you're overreacting, if like I think that you're overreacting, maybe what we do is like, is it possible that it's more than just this thing that's causing your frustration? And like make that part of our language, because it's obvious to me when I notice you're overreacting. Like I know that feeling for me.
Yeah.
And so like I usually just react to that overreaction, trying to make you say, look at this thing we're arguing about. It's not that big of a deal. And so I hyper focus on the immediate thing, the trigger. But I think maybe if I recognize I'm feeling that again, then maybe we can say, is it possible that there are other things contributing to this? And I don't know how that would play out. I don't know. But maybe it just helps us kind of stop and think and say, and maybe we just pause it for 5 minutes and say, let's think about, what may be contributing to this. And also give me an opportunity to recognize maybe that I've been passive aggressive because, whenever I kind of replay things, I always I'm mad at you for not knowing that I'm feeling something, and
which I go through also, right?
But then the reaction for me is like, you should know, and so I get passive aggressive.
So we get back to how could you possibly?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so like maybe that little 5-minute pause will help us to be able to identify, where all the emotions are coming from, and then B, for me to acknowledge like where were the areas in which I contributed to building those emotions.
I get that. Yeah. I think we can try it. It's hard to say. That's the thing is in the moment I can see though how you could be like, is this the only thing bothering you? And I'll be like, well, now that you've opened the can of worms, let's go for this. So I got to find that balance, to figure that out. And I think where I'm tipped, definitely affects the response that we would get in a situation like that.
Yeah,
if I'm too far tipped, we might just get a landslide, off the cliff. So
yeah. No, but I think understanding that there's this desire to be right, right? Desire to win and make and I think going through that process of, okay, one of us, whoever's the cooler head.
Yes, I am the cooler head.
No, but one of us at some point will just say, I'm going to commit to understanding you.
Yeah.
And forget trying to tell you or convince you, but just to understand.
Yeah.
And if one of us can do that, it'll diffuse things faster.
I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You should have done that this past weekend.
Wouldn't that have been wonderful?
It really would have. My list would be non-existent at this point if we'd have worked all day instead of fighting.
If I were, an expert communicator.
Oh, yeah, that. But I also want to talk about the kids.
Yes.
And their fight to be right. Because the number of times, like, it's so hard. Like, when I go through the book in that specific, like, part of the fight to be right, like, again, I see it in you and I see it in the kids. And I don't see it in me. And, like, I get that it's in there, but it's really hard to see in myself. So we'll just go ahead and go to the kids now. Now that we've covered you, let's go to the kids.
Don't worry, I'll remind you.
Okay, thanks. But with the kids, it's like they come and they just want to tattle on each other and, say all the wrongs that the other person did and why they're this, angelic little soul in front of me. Like, I did nothing wrong. I'm right. And everything that the other kid did is wrong.
Yeah.
And it's like, as soon as the kids come up, like, our commitment is to ask the kid, what did you do? What did you do? Like, I don't want you to tell me about anybody else. I want you to tell me what you did. And no matter who the kid is, it always starts with, well, Jasmine, well, Kai, well, Jerem, like, they always start with the other kids, the other offending person, and tell me all the laundry list. They've kept the full tally of everything that person did. And, like, the arguments most of the times are over nothing, but, like, it was my turn to touch the toy. And it's like, okay, well, did you agree to the rules? Did you agree to the terms of when you would switch turns? No. It's like, okay, well, how are you here telling on somebody else that you're absolutely right, that it was your, turn when you never talked about it? You never agreed upon it. There was no anything. And it's so hard to see it in the kids, and it's so easy to try and facilitate for them.
Yeah.
And to get them to see it and understand. Obviously, we still have tattling, every day, so it's not there. But it's so easy to see, like, in the kids where they just fight so hard to be right. And, like, they ignore all of their, grievances along the way and all the little, things that they did to nudge that person further and further away. And they just want to point everything as the other person's, reason that this problem exists. It's completely their fault. I am perfectly right. And that's really, really interesting to see when I read through the chapter, and when I think of the fight to be right, like, I 100% see it in the kids.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the funny thing about all of that is that the kids behave like we behave, right? And so,
well, I mean, not me, because I don't fight to be right.
No, but it's funny when you think about, we were talking about Kai losing things the other day, and it's like, it's the same thing. As we were moving, I'm trying to move this dining room table by myself because of the awkward height and whatever. And so I needed ratchet straps. And so, like, I'm literally underneath a table, lifting up the table, say, can someone please get me my ratchet straps? Now, we had taken them on the trip and whatever, so they weren't in the normal spot. And so I asked Kai, which was a bad decision on my part, but I asked him.
Because he's like me, and I don't find things either.
Yes, exactly. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But he found one end, like the ratchet end, but couldn't find the longer strap part. And so he's like walking through the house and going through the garage and looking through the house. Actually, he didn't go in the garage, is what he said. He didn't go in the garage. And he's like, I've looked everywhere. Like, I can't.
But he didn't go in the garage.
He didn't go in the garage.
Where they're always stored.
Where they are. And so he's like, I've looked everywhere. I can't find them. And I'm like, well, if you can't find them, you haven't looked everywhere. Because if you look everywhere, you're bound to find them because they exist. And so he keeps coming back 2 or 3 times. I can't find them. I've looked everywhere. And so eventually I get the table to a place where I can set it down. I set it down, and then I go into the garage where a pile of straps is sitting out in the open, like
middle of the floor.
In the middle of the floor, like not hidden, not tucked, not put it, like just right there. And I'm like, Kai, come here. come here. And his fight, like every time I challenged him, he got mad. Like, no, I've looked everywhere. And he's like, he needed to be right. And, mentioning.
You moved them there after he was done searching, obviously.
I must have, right? And the interesting thing about this idea of the fight to be right is that when we're wrong, it's so incredibly embarrassing.
Yeah, it's hard.
Right? And honestly,
swallowing that pill is
tough. Yeah. And, you and Kai are very similar in how you look for things.
Yeah.
And it's...
In a lot of ways, we're similar. And I can see it in him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can, but not in you.
No.
Even though you will say, I've looked everywhere for a thing, and then I will spend 13 seconds looking for something and find it. And then, where was it?
I don't know what you're talking about. Right? It's never happened.
But it's like I need to convince you that it doesn't exist anymore. Like, I've looked everywhere. This thing, like, what is wrong with life that this thing disappeared, right? And that becomes the story that we're trying to sell to the world. And then all of a sudden it's like, oops.
Yeah.
Right. And that's another thing. And so, thinking about this idea of fight to be right. And I think you nailed it on the head, that it's so hard for us to see it in ourselves. It's so hard.
And one last thing that I have to talk about, because it's so current, is the Supreme Court Justice nomination that's going on right now. And when the Democrats were in office, the Republicans said no.
The last year of the presidency,
not
we're not going to nominate.
And they didn't even hold a vote. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them even said, hold me to my words, I will stand by this, even if it happens with the Republican president. This is not the way it's supposed to be. Let the people decide. And now here we are in the exact same, or not exact same, but very similar situation, flipped. And even still, the Democrats that fought for it before, saying, no, it's the way it should be, this is how it's supposed to be, are now saying, no, it's not supposed to be that way. And we were, and I get that it's retaliation. I get that it's this,
power play.
Yeah, it's, when it's not your side and when it's not your team, that everything changes and the rules bend, and what you once thought was acceptable is different. But this fight to be right, and seeing them literally flip sides and still fight to be right.
Both teams,
And not a single senator that I'm aware of has remotely come forward to be like, you know what, guys, like, come on, we were just in this situation 4 years ago. Let's use a little logic. Like, nobody is coming to that understanding. Nobody is coming forward to try and reflect back on what just happened 4 years ago. Like, I haven't heard of anybody coming forward to do that yet. Yeah. Everybody's sticking to their side, sticking to their line.
To what benefits them most right now. Yeah.
And with that, everybody needs to vote. Both parties, everybody, you have to vote. So I don't know if you can see my necklace, but it says vote. And everybody needs to vote. Mm-hmm. That is one of the most important things that I have learned in the last, few election cycles, and just watching this division continue to grow, and the lack of ability to remotely self-reflect and say, you know what, a couple years ago I said this. Does it ring true? Does it not? And even to acknowledge the words that were said and help people understand your transformation. Like, there's nothing, there's just flip-flopping back and forth. And that's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I never said that.
Yeah.
And then literally, like, holding so dear to whatever fight is within you right now. It's like, I can ignore everything else because I'm saying this now. And I need you to know that I'm right now, right now. I'm right now. That's
there you go. There you go.
And so I love the idea of just vote, because I guarantee you more will happen from you going and voting than will from people arguing on Facebook.
Yeah.
Right. And this idea of fight to be right, like, Facebook is rife with that. Like, and so I think that as we recommit, us personally, we recommit to trying to understand, that will slowly start to dismantle that within our own relationship, and then with the people that we interact with, and trying to understand people more. I mean, that can transform the world. Yeah. That can fundamentally transform the world.
And we can all learn lessons from that. Like, these are supposed to be our leaders. And think how transformational that would be to the constituents who are voting for these people if they have a leader that's saying, hey, you know what? I made a mistake. Hey, you know what? I've come to a new understanding, and this is how I got here. And I get that they're going to get critiqued no matter which way, but there's got to be a better way than way that we're currently going.
Yeah. Research shows that bosses that are humble and admit mistakes are rated higher than any other. It's like that's all it takes. Just be a human. Just be a good human.
Yeah,
just be
absolutely.
the good.
Be the good. And I think one last thing I just want to note is I don't know that everybody knows that there is a book also.
Yeah.
I think that we got a comment about that from somebody. So The Cure for Stupidity is actually a book, which is what the podcast is based off of. So you can find it on Amazon. You can hit it up on our website. There's all kinds of different ways to find it. So if you're enjoying the podcast and you're curious about where our content framework is coming from, you can check out the book, and the audiobook is actually coming out pretty soon here too, which is really exciting. So so feel free to check it out, The Cure for Stupidity, on Amazon, and leave reviews if you like what you're hearing, or even if you don't, that's all right. Give us some feedback. Let us know. We're new to this and we're open. So
and we acknowledge we make mistakes, obviously.
Absolutely. Awesome. So I think now you can say, be the good.
So with that, be the good.